So this was years ago. Walked up on a couple of guys. It was almost lunchtime. I had them working on something that I thought was pretty easy for about a couple hours. And as I walked up, I saw one guy was just kind of sitting there. I think he was grinding on something, cleaning up a part. And I saw a couple of stuff kind of cut up. And then the other guy was on the other side there, putting something together. And I just had to stop. And inside my head, it was going, surely this isn't all they've done in 2 hours. Surely not. And I asked them, we had a conversation. I was like, this is it. And they had their response, but sure enough, that was all they had done, was build something that should not have taken them 2 hours. And the reason why this really floored me was these were two of the most experienced guys I had at the time. So where the real disconnect was I assumed that them being experienced meant they were going to be able to move quickly. So we'd have this job for a little while. It was something that needed to get knocked out pretty quickly. And I had a couple of these guys around the shop, and they'd done more complicated stuff out in the field before. I've seen them do things much more complicated than what needed to be built. So instantly I thought, cool, I'll have these two guys, pretty experienced, throw them on this, just have them knock it out, get it done. Because at the time I was juggling 3 different jobs that were all going at the same time. Well, that was my first mistake. I assumed, I was like, all right, these guys are experienced. So I came in with it, showed them sketch, showed them kind of what I wanted, design how I wanted it. There was no blueprints. I didn't think it was necessary. It's like, all right, here's the dimensions. This is kind of how I want it built. This is what you're going to use to build it. Cool. Everyone happy? Awesome. So I wasn't there to babysit them. I left it and I walked away. And that is where things, I think, were disconnected, because my assumption of their experience versus being able to execute on what I was used to and my standards for the shop. And these weren't the normal guys I put on tasks like this. And that was probably the number one thing that I learned, was I just kind of pointed and hoped, and hope is not a system at all. So I was pretty upset at this point. Obviously they've been working on this 2 hours, and I had asked them, is this all you got done? That is all they had got done. And this was really a moment for me to step back. I wish I could say that I was perfectly at ease, perfectly calm. I didn't say much. I did simply say, the normal guys I have on this would have probably been able to knock this entire thing out within the amount of time that you guys have had. And this is as far as you got. But I left it at that. I walked away. It was lunchtime. I needed to cool off before I approached it again. But to reiterate, my main focus that I realized after I cooled off and thought about it was that hope, given to them, hoping they could just take it off my shoulders. Like, yeah, these guys are competent. They are experienced. They've done much more complicated things, that they're able to execute on how I like things executed and be able to execute it well with my standards without really being the guys that are typically around me. They're normally out in the field, or they're doing something else at the time. They weren't my crew specifically, but they worked underneath me whenever they were back into the shop. So when they did come in and I had expectation, again, hope was not a good system. I had hoped that they'd be able to take it, run with it, because that's what I was used to doing. It was like, surely these guys are, I got great respect for them. Let's go. So it was a massive kind of high expectation, just bottom out drop of kind of what I received. And that's where I really had to start reflecting on, how did this go wrong and how could I improve it? So from that point on, how I had started tackling is to approach everyone at the same kind of capacity. I knew how to walk through step by step. I had systems, I had stuff in place, and I still got bit. I'm still learning every step and every day. But this job, a couple of years ago, this one was the one that really reinforced that. It was like, you're never going to be done, because I had built the systems, and I had these systems with my crew that I was with every single day, that I would sit down. I would just point it down, put it down very specifically. Okay, this is how it's going to be cut. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to build. This is how I'd like it to be built. And this is the expectation of how far I'd like you to be by the end of set time. I mean, it was laid out very specifically. I had cut sheets. I had all the stuff lined out. And so they were able to just follow it and execute along my expectations and along my timeline, and be able to meet what I had expected and given the system for them to follow. And what my biggest mistake was assuming experience equaled alignment. And that did not come across. So no matter what, don't get hung up on experience, because just because someone's experienced does not mean they're going to be able to be aligned with you in how you want things executed, as far as timeline, as far as the professionalism, or what you had even visually in your mind. If you're crystal clear, and I'm not saying talk to people like they're stupid, and that's what I was typically afraid of with more experienced guys at the time. I didn't want to talk to them and like, oh, does he think I'm stupid? He's out to tell me this stuff. And that's not the way to do it. There's a very healthy way to do it, but you do have to kind of talk to them in a way that's very direct on, I want to be perfectly clear every single step of what my expectations are, because you'd be amazed at how much room there is in the gaps if you leave any for interpretation. And their interpretation can be drastically different than your interpretation. So systems, even though they're in place, have to be enforced, specifically when you run into situations like that, where you don't have someone that's in the culture every single day, but they're a part of, they're working underneath you, or you have them and you're trying to deploy them to do something. You have to make sure that they're going to be treated the same as what you typically do, because my assumption was surely they execute the same way, and that was not the case. So make sure that your alignment is tracking well with the guys, no matter who you're working with. Even if they're experienced, make sure they're following your systems to hit all the landmarks that you have inside your mind and what you're expecting. And you'll be able to grow much faster and farther with that, because that is where I saw things shift the most, and where things were not really in alignment, is having multiple high tier, I guess you'd say very experienced guys. I didn't know a different way of saying that. Your most experienced guys, you're relying on them and expecting them to just be where you're at. Whereas if they're not as experienced, or you're training them up, you seem to kind of handhold a little bit more, or have more systems out in front of them, and they seem to do better. And then you get disgruntled or frustrated at your more experienced guys. And that was the biggest thing. That's where things go fray for a lot of blue collar businesses, smaller businesses, is they assume experience is going to be like, oh, everyone's working the same rate out. No, systems have got to be in place to keep everyone in alignment and going the same track, no matter where you're at in the pecking order. And we had a video about that before on hierarchy, is don't assume that skill set equals alignment to your vision. So wrap it all up, I really wanted to bring it back to the fact that don't get stuck in the traps that I did in the past. And I'm still learning every day. I'm not a guru, I'm not a coach, I'm none of that. I'm just talking out of experiences that I've had and I've learned through, and trying to help you not to make the same mistakes that I did. And I'm still probably gonna make a mistake tomorrow, and we'll probably talk about it in a video. But don't get consumed in the fact that you think you're giving your guys freedom, because you're not necessarily giving them freedom. You're probably giving them vagueness. Don't just be jumping around from project to project, just letting guys kind of do their thing, because really you're not giving them enough details. And that if you're okay with the results, that might work. But if you're trying to go for consistency, you want consistency in brand, you want consistency in execution, you want speed, you want effectiveness, you want efficiency all across the board from start to finish, and you're really trying to crank down if you're bidding jobs, you got to really crank down on a lot of the aspects of that from start to finish. So if you need that all the way across, don't think that, oh, well, these guys have earned the right to have this freedoms. It's like, no, not so. They've earned the right to maybe have freedoms in different things, and you can figure that for yourself. But when it comes to executing and finished product, you have to have the systems in place for it to be consistent, because you don't want one thing going out looking just phenomenal, and then you have a different set of guys and something else goes out and you're like, what happened here? That is not my standard. That's not what I expected. This is not what I like to hold myself to or put my name to. So that is the main thing, is really coming down to consistency, because you're only good as your name, and systems are going to be the thing that really help you. So make sure you put them in place, because that's the big point I'm harping on, is don't assume experience means a hill of beans above they can do something quicker, or maybe execute on your systems quicker. But without the systems, they can still be wandering around, wasting time. Things are vague. They don't really know what you need. they're just like, wow, this is too much freedom. Everyone wants freedom, but you have to have it in the right way, in the right capacities. And when it comes down to executing a job or work, I feel like systems that give people clear paths let them move faster, because it removes that do we need to do this here? How do we do this? Remove all the how, what, where, when, and whys out of the whole process, and let them execute and do their job well. When you remove all the questions and let them just execute, then you're going to get the most efficiency, and you're going to unlock the reason why you have that experience. Experience is important, but you have to have it in the right environment to unlock it to actually be worth anything. Otherwise, it's just as good off as the people that don't have as much experience, because then you're doing rework. It's like, well, that's not what I was expecting. And I've run into those problems quite a few times. So anyways, I hope this helped you out. Stick around, subscribe, like, share, do it all. If you like what I've been talking about, I'll continue to try helping small to medium-sized businesses. I came from a blue-collar background, so that's specifically what I'm talking from, but this applies to any kind of business whatsoever, is how systems can help. How can it can help you go from where you're at now to scale and removing yourself from the bottleneck. If you feel like you are just literally dying, drowning, falling apart, got the weight of the world on your shoulders, your Atlas over here, and it's all on you as the business owner, there's ways to get away from that. That's not how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to feel that way. There are ways to set systems in place for you to scale and get much larger, as large as you'd like to, but don't be falling into a lot of the things that I'm talking about that's making you take this stuff on artificially, or you just don't know any better. Hopefully this is helping you, and it's going to help you to scale, get large. Tell me your stories. I would love to hear them all. I love to hear success stories, failure stories, all of it. I love to hear it in the comments. Put it in the comments below. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.